Okay, YouTube, this is a video on me assembling my EVO heads. These are early style heads. They breathe through the crankcase down near the oil pump. The later ones breathe up through the top of the head here. So I painted these. They were in a little rough shape. I have a video on painting them and then how to get the fins to come up, because that's how the fins are on the cylinders. So I still have them taped. Also, I did some horse trading, some old shovel parts for a set of the high lift keepers and the valve springs from Andrews. And these allow you to run a 550 lift cam as long as your valve guides will clear. This motor is going to see an Andrews EV27 cam. Now these heads have been completely done by John at John's Cycles in Chester, Pennsylvania. He cut the valve seats for me and checked the guides, and everything looks good. He also checked the deck surfaces, and it's good there also. Now John, when he cuts these heads, he laps the valves to make sure that they're lapped correctly and that they're in the proper position. I'm going to do it also. I'm going to put some machinist dye on them, and I want to show you a few things that are important to note when it is somebody is doing your heads. Just because they cut the valves and or the seats doesn't mean that they're doing it right. This is a really simple way to check their work and know that you got it done right. Okay, and as you can see, these heads are really clean. John engraves his name in them so he knows he did them, and that way he's not getting scammed. They were done 1 of 22. Today is May 1st of 22, so you can see they've been done for a while. You can also see hopefully how great that they look, and also with the valves. Now if you see that ridge right there, that's pretty much where it was that he lapped them. You can see it a lot better on the exhaust here. Now it's important that the exhaust seat, when it hits, isn't right at the very edge where it's like off the end of the valve. It's really important where the valve and seat come into contact with each other. If the seat's too thin, the valve can't dissipate its heat and you end up having a valve issue. Also, if it's too thick, that's a problem. Now this is right where you want it. You want it towards the outside edge. That's where the valve is the hottest. And then you want just enough seat that the heat can transfer and it can still seal. Although these heads are finished, like I said, I am going to show you how to lap. Also, you can see right here, he gives it a 3-angle cut. It's the middle angle here where it's gray is where it's lapped, and you can see the width of the seat here. I use this steel red layout die, and I'm just going to give them everything a quick paint here. And you don't need too much of it. You just need a little bit of it. Like, you don't need a thick layer of it, but you need everything coated. And here's the exhaust valve. Now everything's coated. The next thing you need is some grinding compound. Now I've had this grinding compound for 35 years. It's coarse on this side if you open that cap, and it's fine on this side. And the seats have already been cut, so I don't need a coarse grinding compound. I just need the fine. So you want to make sure that your dye is dry, and it's dry here, and it's pretty close to being dry over here. So I just take a little of the lapping compound. You don't need much. They've already been lapped anyway, and just spread it on the valve. Now when you're finished with these, it's very important to make sure that you get all the grinding compound off. If not, you're putting grinding compound in your engine. The next thing you need is the suction cup tool that's been around forever and a day. Now put the valve in. You got to make sure it goes all the way down. When they do these, they smack the valve in, give it a turn. Pull it up, give it a quarter turn, smack it down. Again. And that was more than enough for what you need. and you just take a clean rag and just wipe that off. Of course the dye can stay on, that doesn't need to come off, but I do use brake clean on everything to make sure it's clean, and then I put assembly lube. But here you can see right where the lap was. So you can see there's still some dye on the outside edge. The gray area is where we just lapped, and then there's dye on the inside edge of that valve. That's exactly what you want them to look like. Now you can clearly see what the seat looks like and where it's contacting it on the inside. So when you cut these, the angles are 61 or 60 or 61. There are 45 or 46, and then the last angle is 30. So really it's 30, 45, 60, and that's your 3-angle valve job. Now I'm going to do the intake also, just so you see what's up. Again, we'll take a little lapping compound. You don't need much. You need to be careful not to get any of the grinding compound on the stem, so that it doesn't end up grinding on your valve stem. There you have that one. Okay, again, about the same. You have that outside edge where it didn't touch. You have the seat, which is about the identical width. And then you have the back side. Same with the head. You have the seat, and you have the other 2 cuts to give you the 3 angles. And that's all about flow. So once again, another great job by John at John's Cycles. Okay, I just want to go over some parts that I'm using for this build. This is the James gasket set. It's JGI 17033-83-A. And this is the early EVO top end kit, so it's 84 through 91. Next I'm using the Andrews collars, part number 293115. These are the spring collars, the upper spring collars. And the springs I'm using are Andrews again. It's 294152, and you can see here where it's for the 550 lift cam springs. I'll be using an Andrews EV27. I use Redline assembly lube. I really like this stuff, been using it for a long time, but there's other brands that are good. I have the keepers, which have been cleaned, and the lower spring retainers that have been cleaned. Okay, so with the valve seals, these are out of that James gasket set. And these are Viton style, which are the best in my opinion. And it talks with the instructions here. Now, these valve guides have not been cut for high lift cam. So it's important that you do follow these instructions. These have a slight taper cut on them. And if you push the seals down too far, they'll come in contact with the rubber and push it up, and it won't seal properly. It ends up ruining the valve seal. Now if they're cut down, you don't have to follow these instructions, because you can just put them on until they bottom out onto this step right here, and they won't come in contact. But this says with a pencil, make a mark 1/4 inch down from the tip of the valve guide, and then you insert the spring loaded end of the seal into a 7/16 12-point socket. Slide the seal onto the guide until the bottom edge is in line with the pencil mark that you put on there. And it says be careful not to over install the seal. Lubricate the valve stem, sealing lip, and gently slide the valve stem into the seal. Any installation sleeve is not necessary. So first thing I'm going to do is measure the total height down to that lip. and the total height is 0.266. You can only go 250, and then this, to go right to the rubber, the depth of the seal is 0.270, but you only want to go 250. So it's going to go almost all the way on, but not quite all the way on. Okay, so to do this, you just take the socket, you put the spring into the 7/16 12-point socket, like so, and it holds it perfectly. It's going to be very difficult for me to make a pencil mark at 0.250 or a 1/4 inch down. So I'm just going to drive it on, but not quite all the way down. And you can see it's a very small hammer I'm using. So I'm going to try and stay the 20 thousandths off of the bottom. Now if you look, I'm right where I need to be. I can even see inside where it's hard to see. I'm sure the camera doesn't see that, but it's about right where it needs to be. Now we'll put the lower retainer on. You have to be careful on some heads, like shovels, you need to put that on first. On the EVOs, you don't. You always want to clean everything really good off camera. I had already cleaned it, but I just want to show you. You do clean the socket. You clean the guide. Install the socket onto the seal. Let's go gently. Like that. Put the lower retainer on. Again, I'm going to measure this one. Just because one's close doesn't mean they're all the same. This one's at 0.266. So we're going to leave it a little off the bottom again. We'll bring this over here. I'll take it off. That's exactly how it should be. Next, I just dab some motor oil on them so that they're really good and lubed for when that valve comes through. So we'll do the intake valve first. Here, I just take and paint up the intake valve. Again, I clean this off camera and just make sure it is completely coated in the assembly lube. You don't want this thing running dry. Now this assembly lube is like a paste, and then when it heats up it turns right into an oil. Okay, just line it up. I just take it slow. I come in and out a little because I want to make sure that grease gets up in there. Now I'm at the point where the valve's right at the seal here. I like to put my finger here and just kind of help it come through the seal like that. So now that valve's in and the seals hold them for sure. Okay, when they pack these upper retainers, they put them in some kind of oil or coating so that they don't rust. As you can see, it's thick like honey on these, and it's good to get that off. And then also I'm just going to give the springs a good spray off and a wipe. The secret to success with any engine building is cleanliness. And with the snap of an editing finger, you got that goo off these things and they're nice and clean. Now we're going to put them together. Take one of the keepers and put them in. Take another keeper and put it in. Okay. And now there it is, right. You also want to be sure that you don't tighten the spring compressor down so much that the keeper smashes the valve. I have another video where I show actually how to measure what the total lift you can have is. Again, I lube it up. Once it comes to the top where it is there, I put my finger here to kind of support it and then wiggle it through like that. Now you can check valve lift on these just the same way you might. I have another video that shows it how to do on a shovel head. Put the keepers on without the spring. Lift it up. And now you can take lift it up, and now you can take the vernier caliper and just do a rough check. So I'm at the top of the seal, the underside of the keeper, and that's where it just touches. The gap there is 0.656 from the bottom of the keeper to the top of that seal. And I checked it again, it's 0.660. And then from the lower spring to the upper, you can check those too, but not going to really be able to check it with this. You can almost check it with a machinist scale or give a really rough check like this. But you have to have the right springs to do that. And this looks like it's, you know, 1.7 inches. But you'd have to check where your coil bind on your springs are and further. Okay, so now we'll put the springs on. Put the upper retainer there. You always want to make sure you're in the center of the valve on the bottom, which I am. Get the spring compressor down. Okay, and that's how you assemble an EVO head. The one last thing I like to do is just give them a little tap with a clean hammer, rubber, to ensure everything's seated properly. And that's it. It's putting together an EVO head. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. I appreciate it. Thanks and have a great day.